Delegates Lounge. Pull up a chair. I'm Alex Tarquinio, a journalist based at the United Nations here in New York City, and your MC for this podcast, featuring some of the most influential minds in the world today. Settle in for some riveting tete-a-tete, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Almost 20 hours of, sunlight during the day. It makes those berries, especially the wild ones, very, very tasty.
Blood sausage. So we are using the blood and then we make sausages from that. If I'm going to explain how we do that, though I think nobody wants to eat that.
It's one that we call rep, which I would liken to collard greens, kale, chomolia, spinach, and many others. We take pride in drying food when we have it in abundance.
Rabanadas are the proof that nothing goes to waste in Portuguese cuisine, because you can use bread leftovers in this dessert.
Its history is linked to shepherds who spent long hours in the mountains. Legend has it that one of them got tired of the usual bread and cheese.
It's a real favourite, and it's messy, but it's delicious in both summer and the winter.
Prickly pears are everywhere. Another thing that you pick when you're walking as well, as long as you have some gloves.
Welcome to our special podcast, Dining with Diplomats. In this episode, part 1, you'll hear about the childhood memories and secret treats of government ministers and ambassadors. In part 2, you'll hear them open up about the intricacies of diplomatic dinners, the near misses, and the value of gastro-diplomacy. Although diplomatic dining evokes grand feasts, where multiple courses are served up on fine porcelain emblazoned with the nation's crest, as you've just heard, when asked about their favorite dishes, the diplomats often chose comfort food. It's quite a Proustian turn from adult worries to our deepest bonds with food that we formed as a child. Food is, quite literally, the most essential requirement of our existence. A handful of skipped meals is all it takes for our survival instinct to kick in. The UN is obviously involved in food security, but the many conflicts in the world today, compounded by droughts and rising sea levels from climate change, is leading to increased food precarity. Some of the ambassadors had that in mind when the recipes they suggested included a note about reducing food waste. Throughout history, as soon as a society secured a diverse supply of foodstuffs in a sufficient quantity, it set about creating a complex array of rituals concerning the preparation and serving of meals. Some comestibles were deemed gross, while others became a source of community pride. Friendly food rivalries emerged between nearby nations, and sometimes not so friendly. Even today, an entire people can be reduced to a slur based on their national dish, and spats over the origin story of a common dish are, well, common. So sure, there may be dishes described here that make some listeners a bit queasy. In that case, don't try them, but try to understand the culture and conditions that gave rise to these dishes, whether that's the climate, the crops, or the native wildlife. For Dining with Diplomats, we've spoken with foreign ministers, with permanent representatives, so-called because they lead their country's permanent mission to the United Nations, with their deputies, and with an ambassador's spouse. We're offering up a smorgasbord of recipes from Australia, Brazil, Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Finland, Malta, Portugal, Slovenia, Switzerland, the United States, and Zambia. The national cuisine often serves as a springboard to discuss the wider culture and history. For example, stick around until the end of part 1 to hear the Maltese ambassador's fascinating description of the Knights of Malta. We started chatting with diplomats about their national cuisine in September, when world leaders inevitably beat a path to the United Nations headquarters in New York, and kept going right up until a few days before Christmas. Here are some traditional Christmas dishes suggested by the UN ambassadors representing Switzerland and Portugal.
My name is Pascal Bereswil, and I'm the permanent representative of Switzerland to the United Nations. Today, I want to talk to you about one of my favorite Swiss dishes, the cheese raclette. The name comes from the French verb racler, which means to scrape. The base of this dish is a half wheel of cheese heated in a specially designed oven. Once the top is melted, it is scraped over potatoes. It is often served with pickled onions, cornichons, gherkins, and tea or white wine. But there are many variations, and each family has their own way of serving it. It is eaten all year round, but is especially appreciated during the festive season as it is a very convivial dish. So here in New York, I often serve it to my colleagues during winter receptions, or we enjoy it during our traditional Christmas theme party. The dish is originally from the Swiss canton of Valais. Its history is linked to shepherds who spent long hours in the mountains. Legend has it that one of them got tired of the usual bread and cheese. He wanted something warm, but without any utensils, he could only melt the cheese directly over the fire. Raclette was born. Today, it is linked to many aspects of our work as diplomats. Apart from the nice way it brings people together, the cheese is, for instance, also an AOP, a protected designation of origin, which guarantees that everything, from the raw materials to the production process, comes from a clearly defined region of origin. This is dealt with at the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, and the World Trade Organization, WTO. There is also plenty of sustainable development goals in the dish. Swiss innovation is playing a major role, helping the cheesemakers and farmers to implement the 2030 agenda with new production techniques that, for example, help to produce with a reduced water footprint. I hope you will enjoy the raclette, and in any case, best wishes for the holiday season and bon appétit.
Hello, I'm Ambassador Rui Vinhas, permanent representative of Portugal to the UN, and I'm very pleased to share with you one of the most traditional Portuguese sweets for Christmas. It's called rabanadas natalícias. Rabanadas are the proof that nothing goes to waste in Portuguese cuisine, because you can use bread leftovers in this dessert. To frame it in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, with this Christmas dish, we fulfill target 12.3 to halve per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer levels and reduce food losses. Rabanadas natalícias, also called golden slices, are a typical Christmas Eve sweet in Portugal. It dates back to the 15th century, the recipe passed down from generation to generation, with few alterations along the way. The recipe usually includes milk, a stick of stale bread, egg, sugar, lemon, and cinnamon. They are always present at the Christmas table, reminding us of our childhood and traditional holidays dinners. Cinnamon-flavored treats are everything during the festive season. There are also sorts of ways of enjoy this amazing spice, and in Portugal that means making plenty of rabanadas to snack on or to enjoy as a simple dessert. They are crispy and sweet slices of toasted French bread and go really well with a hot drink on the side. It's a great way to make use of any stale bread you might have left over in the pantry, so definitely give this recipe a try. The trick is to dip the slices of bread in milk and eggs, and guess what? Yes, fry them in butter. After frying, they are immersed in brown sugar and cinnamon. Don't forget to try it with Porto wine. Merry Christmas and season greetings for all.
From Prague, we received recommendations for traditional Czech Christmas recipes, one savory and one sweet. The Czech Republic's Minister for European Affairs, Martin Dvorak, said that personally, he would serve the traditional Czech kuba with the Christmas dinner. Kuba is made with pearl barley, mushrooms, and plenty of garlic. He described it as a simple, flavorful meal with deep roots in Czech history, traditionally prepared during Christmas as a meat-free option. Minister Dvorak said that for him, it's not just about tradition, but about values we should honor more today. Using local ingredients, reducing waste, and embracing sustainability. And of course, there would have to be cukroví, classic Czech Christmas cookies. These traditional Czech holiday cookies reminded me of a recipe that we made every year at Christmas. Mandelkrunchens. It's a simple family recipe that calls for beating together egg yolks, creamed butter, sugar, and flour. You would spread a bit of the beaten egg whites with a pinch of tartar on the cookies and top them with finely chopped almonds and red and green colored sugar before baking them in a slow oven. In September, the recommendations were evidently geared more towards late summer and harvest time. Here's Finland's Foreign Minister Elina Valtonen and Ambassador Robert Wood, who has often represented the United States in Security Council meetings. But first, Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna, whose story really resonated with me.
We normally have very traditional dishes, and it's very similar to like the German cuisine, but there's one specific thing. This is the blood sausage. So we are using the blood, and then we make sausages from that. If I'm going to explain how we do that, though I think nobody wants to eat that, but this is a traditional thing, so my mother can do it very well. Normally, of course, today's people, they are buying them from the shop, but it is something very specific for Estonia. When I was younger and a student, beginning of 90s, when we had nothing after the collapse of Soviet Union, we got, during the restoration of the private property, we got back our farms and lands. And actually my family, we had, animals, and we did everything ourselves. So I have been the farm country boy. I know everything. I can do the blood sausages from the beginning.
How long do you have to cure? Do you have to cure the blood sausage?
It takes you, put it on the oven maybe like half an hour.
Well, I think at this stage I would have to say that my favorite dish is a carrot pie, which my daughter bakes. Not sure whether that's so fantastically traditionally Finnish, but at least she makes her Finnish version of it. Very Finnish, or fresh berries, say strawberries and blueberries, because of the very, very long days in the summer. Well, we have a short summer in comparison, but we have almost 20 hours of, light, sunlight during the day. It makes those berries, especially the wild ones, very, very tasty. When I give those berries to my foreign friends, they're like, well, either this tastes like childhood or...
Do you prepare them somewhere? You just...
You don't have to prepare. Traditional dish from berries is you just put the berries and pour some milk on it. Perhaps some sugar, but typically you don't even need the sugar, but because they're so sweet.
I mean, one of my favorite dishes, and it is very a multicultural dish, is eggplant parmesan. And I know there are many countries kind of claim ownership of this dish. It is my favorite. When I go back to Washington on the weekends, my wife and I, well, let me be honest, my wife prepares it for me. She's a wonderful, wonderful cook. And the type of mozzarella cheese she uses and the type of eggplants are just wonderful. And I do help her from time to time make it with a little pasta on the side. And it's just something that I enjoy thoroughly. And it relaxes me quite a bit to have that along with a little glass of wine.
Slovenia is perhaps best known to many Americans as the native country of their once and future First Lady, Melania Trump. It's a mountainous land on the Adriatic coast that was ruled by the Habsburgs until the end of the First World War. It became independent from Yugoslavia in 1991. Traditional folk recipes can be a sign of cultural survival. Potica, which is known colloquially as the Queen of Desserts in Slovenia, is one such folk dish. As a side note, I wrote about Slovenia's interesting campaign to join the UN Security Council for Foreign Policy, and I'll include the link to that article in the show notes. The UN holds annual elections for 5 member states to 2-year terms, sitting alongside the Council's 5 permanent members. And Slovenia is in the middle of its 2-year term. The Security Council presidency rotates monthly among the 15 members. During Slovenia's presidency, they always had potica on the table in the sunny Security Council presidency's office and served it during meetings.
My name is Klemen Ponikvar. I'm the political coordinator here at the Mission of Slovenia. It means that I'm merging different roles. One role is taking care of the cabinet here of the ambassador, so internally trying to manage the staff. And then externally, I'm part of the group of 15 members of the Security Council who are, responsible to setting up the stage for our ambassadors to have meaningful conversations with each other. First references to potica in really old, first Slovenian books, basically.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And how
15th, 16th century.
15th, 16th century,
Yeah.
okay.
Slovenia was a land of peasants. It was made of things that people had at the time, eggs, flour, and yeast that is needed for this.
So how is it served?
So a very classic one would be a round one, and you make it in this clay pot. And once you roll it, you put it in this clay pot, it grows. It's a couple of rounds that you're basically making with this, because you need to take into account the room temperature. You know how it is with yeast and these dishes that are a little bit more complicated. So you need to have everything sorted before endeavoring into making a potica. But it's at the end, you put it in the oven. You bake it around an hour or so, and then you take it out. You cover it, you let it rest a little bit, and you put some sugar, powdered sugar, over it.
Then the powdered sugar, that sounds delicious.
Since it's so heavy, people usually drink a glass of milk or a glass of tea with it. I think the two most typical holidays when this dish would be eaten is indeed Christmas and Easter. During the Easter, it's still pretty cold around Slovenia. It's a sweet dish. Sometimes you can also make it salty, but it's a cake or a loaf which is rolled, and it comes in different tastes. I mean, depending on what you actually put in the dough. I think it shows a little bit also the spirit of Slovenians, because it's quite a complex dish to make. Hours and hours of work are put into this. It's also, Slovenians are very proud of their own recipes of this. So they're going from one generation into another generation. And it usually takes more than one person to do it. So it's kind of a social thing also. We're a country that stretches around the mountains. So sometimes people wouldn't have that much in common with each other on different sides of mountains. But this is, I think, something that always connected them, this love for this dish.
Did the different historical influences affect the cuisine and the culture? I mean, you have the history of the Habsburg Empire. You're so close to Italy. Is there an Italian influence on the cuisine?
I think we are, as you said, on the crossroads. I mean, there's been influences from all over Europe, from the south, from the north. I mean, part of the Habsburg Empire, I think this might be also the reason why potica is so close to Slovenian hearts, is that this is something that was kept entirely Slovenian, like really, really Slovenian, with these developments that people had certain access to certain new products that would enable them to maybe, push the limits of the taste of potica. I don't know, these days I think I've heard around that people are even doing poppy seed with modern twist. But yeah, I think it's something which is seen as a very, very traditional dish.
Rebecca Bryant, Australia's Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations, spoke eloquently about the hardiness of the foodstuffs in the land down under. In her many foreign postings, she has served her favorite Australian dessert, pavlova, a sophisticated dish that requires patience and skill to make. Food, like language, often requires translation as we venture across the globe. Tell me a little bit about your favorite dish and why you feel that represents the Australian culture so much.
Thanks so much, Alex. And it's really great to be on your podcast here in the Delegates Lounge. I'm going to be cheeky and choose two dishes. It won't be a surprise to anyone that I choose the pavlova, which is a quintessential Australian dessert. Egg whites and sugar whipped together for a long time to form this amazing, thick kind of meringue-like dessert that you then bake in a circle, and then once it's cooked, you pile it with cream and fruit or chocolate, whatever you sort of taste you're looking for. We serve pavlova in my house on all special occasions, birthdays, Christmas. It's a real favourite, and it's messy, but it's delicious in both summer and the winter. The origins of pavlova are interesting. The Australian folklore suggests that a chef in Melbourne cooked it to celebrate Anna Pavlova, the ballerina's first visit to Australia in the mid-1940s. But the New Zealanders claim the origin story of pavlova as well. So it's, it's a little bit of fun rivalry between Australia and New Zealand, our Tasman neighbours. The other dish that I would talk about is one it's not culturally significant, but it's important to me. I grew up with 8 older brothers and sisters, so we had a big table, and my mum's way of feeding us all was with bulk supplies of staples, lots of cabbage and lots of potato. And potato bake, cooked by my mum, was, thinly sliced potatoes layered with cream and nutmeg, salt and pepper and butter. It was rich. It was delicious. Fantastic in winter. Wonderful with a barbecue, and great to feed the masses. So my kids today, when they're feeling a little bit down and need some self-care, they'll make themselves a little potato bake just as my mum used to make it. So it's a real family favourite.
That sounds like an excellent side dish to have at the holidays when you have a lot of people around the table. Pavlova, is it relatively easy for a home cook to make for the first time? If you don't get them just so, sometimes they can be a little bit unforgiving.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've lived all around the world, and everywhere I go, I make pavlova, often because I'm hosting and I want to share with people one of my favourite dishes. And it's different everywhere you cook it. So when I was living in the Pacific, I found that the meringue was quite a different quality, possibly because of the quality of the eggs. I actually think they're much fresher in the Pacific. You're getting them directly from farmers, but, in urban areas, your eggs are older and they've come through suppliers, and so maybe they're, 2 weeks or a month out of the chicken. And I think the fresher the eggs, the harder it is to get that real marshmallow consistency on the inside of the pavlova. The real trick with a pavlova is to create this beautiful hard crust or shell on the outside, but this delicious fluffy meringue on the inside. But, it's not always possible to get that consistency, depending on whether your eggs are room temperature or how fresh or old they are.
And how do you whip it? Is it an electric whipper, or do you have to just beat really hard? I mean, is there a special way to whip it to get that consistency?
Yeah, it's funny. When I was living in Solomon Islands, the first time I made it, I didn't have an electric blender or whipper, and so I was doing it with one of those rotary blenders, and it took a very, very long time. You have to whip those eggs for quite a long time to get that beautiful texture. So very good to do it with an electric mixer.
So where you were based in the Pacific was Solomon Islands, and anywhere else where you represented Australia?
I lived in the Solomon Islands for 3 years, but I've also spent quite a lot of time in Papua New Guinea and Fiji, a beautiful part of the world.
Were they familiar with pavlova, and did they have their own variations?
Yeah, and because they have all the beautiful fresh tropical fruits. So in the beautiful house that I lived in Honiara, views of the ocean, mango trees everywhere. So the pavlovas were always decorated with tropical fruits, but it was sometimes difficult to get the fresh cream that you really need to make pavlova special. So, when we were able to make it, it really was a special occasion, and usually we would have large groups and everybody loved it. So sharing food is a real Pacific cultural thing. I know it is the world over, but it's a special time in the Pacific when all the Wontok can come together. Wontok means one family, and everyone would come together and share food. It's fantastic.
It sounds absolutely delicious. Especially desserts are always fun to discuss. I did actually want to ask you about one other Australian dessert, lamingtons, which I think is known throughout Australia, but is particularly famous in Queensland. Can you tell us a little bit about the history and how those are made?
Yeah, I mean, lamingtons were a really prominent part of my childhood. We used to use lamingtons for sports fundraising and things. We had lamington drives, and we would sell packets of 12 lamingtons to raise money for sporting teams. I mean, the origin story of lamingtons is a little clearer. As I understand it, it was created by Lord Lamington, who was governor of Queensland from about 1896 to the early 1900s. And the story goes that his French chef, when caught at late notice about a morning tea for the ladies in the local area, he grabbed a day-old sponge, and to dress it up to make a nice-looking cake, he dipped it in chocolate and then rolled it in coconut so that they could eat it without creating a mess. So that's the origin story. I guess lamingtons today have been adapted by people. Some people cut them in half and fill them with cream and jam. But the traditional lamington is a very basic sponge dipped in chocolate and rolled in coconut. Not my favourite thing, I'll be honest. They're a bit dry for me, but quintessentially Australian for sure.
I did find them a little bit dry myself too, because they are a day-old sponge cake, but the chocolate, and if you like coconut with chocolate, it's a nice mix. Also adding a little bit of jam would be nice. It's interesting. Much as Australia has a unique ecosystem, plants and animals, of course, the marsupials, but also foods, Weetabix, Vegemite. Why is it that you think Australia has such unique foodstuffs?
I mean, my best guess is that because Australia is so vast and the population is relatively small, the distances between communities and shops were very long. And, so I think that a lot of our staples are hardy and they last a long time. If you're only going to the shops once a month or once a fortnight, then, it's good to buy in bulk, and Weet-Bix could honestly last through a nuclear holocaust, I think. They're very stable food. And Vegemite as well. I brought over to the United States with me jars of Vegemite that had been in my pantry for a couple of years, and they're still fine. They never, I think it's all the yeast in it. They never get moldy, or they never go off. So, a lot of our staples they're comfort foods, they're hardy, they last a long time. And, I think that's just the nature of living in Australia, where, it can be 4, 5, 6 hours drive to the nearest shopping centre.
And I've grown to really like Vegemite. It is an acquired taste. I didn't obviously grow up with it. But if it's really crispy toast and plenty of butter, that's the thing. You do need butter with Vegemite, I think. And then the nice spread of Vegemite. And it's tasty and good for you. It has all those vitamins. Now, another interesting thing is that you, of course, celebrate Christmas and New Year's, what we think of as the winter holidays in the Northern Hemisphere. You celebrate them in your summer. And I wonder if there's a little bit of incongruity. Do you watch the Christmas movies from the Northern Hemisphere and see all of the snow, and you're out by the Barbie celebrating in hot weather? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, our Christmas traditions are informed by the US and Europe, of course, but we have adapted them to suit the weather. Summer in Australia is highly variable these days. It can be a cool day, it can be, 20 degrees Celsius, and that's lovely to have a hot meal. But if you happen to get a 36 or 37 or 38 degree summer's day on Christmas Day, the last thing you want to be eating is a roast turkey. So we do tend to adapt our Christmas meal to suit the climate. We sometimes have seafood, cold roast chickens, delicious salads. Our desserts are, there's always a Christmas pudding with custard, but, more commonly it's pavlova, it's ice cream cake, big fruit salads with cream, that type of thing. Everybody will eat lunch. We will all, get a food coma in the afternoon. The kids will play outside. Sometimes we have Christmas by the beach. It's really wonderful. And, it's great to be here in New York, and I'm looking forward to spending Christmas here this year. But I will be thinking about Australia and my family on a hot summer's afternoon, resting after a delicious Christmas lunch.
The Consulate General in Brazil in New York suggested a traditional starter course that Brazilians often enjoy while their festive Christmas or New Year's dinners are sizzling away in the oven. In Brazil, food is more than nourishment. It's a celebration of community, culture, and tradition. One dish that they say perfectly embodies this spirit is pão de queijo, their beloved cheese bread. A staple in Brazilian homes, bakeries, and cafes, pão de queijo is more than just a snack. It's a symbol of hospitality and the comforting flavors of the Brazilian dairy farming region where it originated, which is known as Minas Gerais. Pão de queijo is naturally gluten-free, made with tapioca flour, cheese, eggs, milk, and oil. Its unique texture, a crisp exterior with a soft, chewy interior, sets it apart from other breads. The use of tapioca flour, derived from the cassava root, reflects Brazil's indigenous culinary traditions. The traditional recipe uses Minas cheese, which was added to UNESCO's global list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity just in time for the Christmas holiday season in 2024. Pão de queijo pairs beautifully with coffee or tea, making it also a popular choice for breakfast or an afternoon snack. This dish also tells a story of resilience and adaptation. Cassava, the key ingredient, was a staple for indigenous Brazilians long before Portuguese colonization. Over time, European influences introduced dairy, combining local and foreign elements into the pão de queijo we know today that captures the heart of Brazilian cuisine, a fusion of flavors, cultures, and history. In New York and many other big cities, you can find pão de queijo served fresh at Brazilian restaurants, or if you prefer to bake it at home, many grocery stores and Brazilian markets sell frozen pão de queijo. Just pop them in the oven and enjoy the authentic taste of Brazil in minutes. If you'd like to make them from scratch, you'll find a link to the recipe in our show notes, along with recipes for many of the dishes described in this episode. For home cooks, pão de queijo is surprisingly simple to prepare. The ingredients are blended to create a batter, which is then baked in small round portions on a tray. The result is a delightful bite-sized treat, perfect for sharing with friends. For those who like to experiment, it is common to slice the pão de queijo after it is ready and add fillings, like shredded chicken or pork, some extra cheese, or, for the sweet lovers, dulce de leche or Nutella. We recently spoke with Cecilia Milambo, the wife of Zambia's UN ambassador and president of the United Nations Delegates Spouses Club, giving her a unique position to describe the spouse's role in diplomatic dining in the second part of this special. It's a flat, landlocked country south of the equatorial zone with 3 distinct seasons that affect agriculture and diet, and there are varying culinary traditions in the regions. Christmas falls within their hot, rainy summer. As a former British colony until 1964, Zambians share the English language and a love of afternoon tea. Welcome, Cecilia. Thank you for joining us today for our special episode called Dining with Diplomats.
Thank you, Alex, for having me on your wonderful podcast. My name is Cecilia Kanyangwa Milambo. I am from Lusaka, Zambia. I am the spouse of the permanent representative to the United Nations for Zambia, Dr. Chola Milambo.
First, I did want to ask if your country has something you would consider a national dish that you would like to see served, perhaps at the United Nations, to represent your country, and why it is of importance to your culture.
Absolutely. So Zambia does have a staple food called nshima. Basically, this is made from cornmeal, mixing water and cornmeal. The taste for those that have never had it before would be likened to white rice, and it goes with a variety of dishes. Now, nshima is what we call it in Zambia, and other countries serve it as well. South Africa calls it pap, Zimbabwe calls it sadza, And I know that Kenya has it as well, or the eastern part of Africa, they call it ugali. So it would be great to have it as a staple food at the UN, seeing that many African countries do serve it, and those that would taste it for the first time actually enjoy it and ask for it many times when they visit Zambia or here at our residence.
Does this have a distinct flavor, your cornmeal dish?
It's like rice, plain white rice.
So you add the meat and the vegetables for the flavor?
Yes, that is why it's so popular. It's so easy to make and blends with almost anything. Then we have our own relish. So we say relish. Shima is a carbohydrate, and the way we serve it, it has to go with a vegetable and a protein in order to have a balanced meal. So we have a variety of vegetables in Zambia: okra, collard greens. There's one that we call rep, which I would liken to collard greens, kale, chomolia, spinach, and many others. We take pride in drying food. When we have it in abundance, we dry it, salted and sun-dried, so that we can enjoy these meals in the seasons that these vegetables are not available. And then we have certain regions or provinces that do cattle ranching. For example, my husband is from the southern part of the country, and they take pride in cattle ranching. So we know where to go for beef steak.
That's a really well-rounded diet. And the vegetables sound delicious. Those are all obviously warm weather vegetables. I'm thinking okra and collard greens. And I do know you have some seasonality there. Do you have vegetables that don't grow in your winter?
So our cold season will be likened to spring weather here, but we Zambians consider that as our cold season. We'll bring out our coats and whatnot. But, the cold cannot be compared to the snow or, the coldest season here in the US. So, yes, in lieu of not having those vegetables in that season, come the dry ones that I talked about earlier. How we preserve those is we boil them, we salt them, and put them out in the sun, such that when you boil them in those seasons, they become fresh again. And one of the favorite delicacies is mixing it with pounded groundnuts, peanuts here. Blend them or pound them with a mortar and pestle. Sieve them, and that powder, when mixed with most of these vegetables, is so delicious. And that is another popular delicacy. So that's what we prepare most of these dry vegetables with.
In the Northern Hemisphere, we use a lot of nuts around Christmas, and obviously, traditionally, it was cold and not much was growing in the far Northern Hemisphere in Christmas, so you'd have a lot of dried and cured things at Christmas. But you still have hot weather at Christmas. Are there special dishes you have there, or do you go with the big, heavy Christmas dinner even though it's hot out?
So Christmas for us, chicken and rice. So rice in the time of my grandparents and parents was a luxury. People would only have it on Christmas Day. In most Zambian homes, it'll be chicken and rice on Christmas Day.
And is the chicken stuffed?
Ours is not stuffed. We cut it up in pieces and boil it. Very basic: tomato, onion, and salt, and cooking oil, brown it. And that's with very thick gravy.
Wait, do you brown it after you boil it? So you boil it first and then brown it?
So boil it. When the water drains, you reserve some, which is like a broth. Put the broth aside. You fry it in the oil, or even its own oil, because chicken has some oil. My paternal grandmother was a domestic science teacher in her day. And when she retired and moved to the village, in her little hut, she made the best chicken gravy. Up to now, I've never eaten such delicious chicken like she did. And she used the actual animal fat. It was so delicious. And that's the tradition that we've continued, though we use modern day cooking oil. It could be vegetable oil, olive oil, or any of these that are available.
So if I understand right, you boil it first And then you drain all but a little bit of water. And what would you add to the water to create the gravy?
Okay, so when you drain chicken, you put your oil, if the chicken doesn't have enough animal fat, and you fry it. And then you add your tomatoes, your onions, and the broth that you had before.
And for about how long do you boil it before frying it?
You have to keep an eye on it. And unfortunately, there are no recipes written down. So you boil that, the blood drains, and the soup or the broth will start to thicken. Mm-hmm. So that's what preserves the flavor. And then you brown it, mix that broth that you had, tomatoes, onions, salt. Others add curry or any other modern spices these days.
Do you need a thickener? Like, do you use the cornmeal to thicken it, or you just let it thicken from the fat?
It thickens on its own.
I'm also curious that rice was a specialty at Christmas because it was relatively scarce. And I'm wondering if rice does not grow as well in your country because of the climate, or is it just that it wasn't put there to begin with as a tradition and was a more recent import?
So it's not a staple food. So rice was a luxury, but we do have two regions that have historically grown rice. One of them is in Mongo in the Western Province. This rice from Mongo is more for a dessert, rice puddings. It's very soft and has a wonderful aroma. Oh my goodness, you cannot resist it when you smell it. And because it's in the swampy region, they're able to grow that. Then there's another region which is partially in Tanzania and Zambia called Nakonde. So we have Nakonde rice. Those are the two prominent regions, but the rest we all do cornmeal, and we prefer cornmeal over rice in most cases.
And what about fruit?
So the first one is mango.
Delicious. A lot of people's favorite fruit.
Absolutely. It's a tropical fruit. And again, each region has a different taste of the mango.
Oh, so there is some regionality or different varieties?
Yes. Absolutely. So some of the mangoes that you would get from Mongo wouldn't taste the same as those in Lusaka, but all of them are delicious. It just depends on your taste buds. We have big mango, which is like what you'd find in most stores here. The most delicious, though, is the small mango. Oh, my goodness. This mango has a lot of juice, such that most of us, of course, we do this in the privacy of our backyards. We prefer to eat it from the hand, such that even, the juice from the mango is dripping down your hand. There's something about that. It's a cultural thing in some families that we have, of course, oranges, lemons. There's a certain region in Zambia, in Mwinilunga, Northwestern Province, where they have endless pineapples. Most of the food is organic.
Well, with the heat, I'm certain it's very refreshing.
Absolutely.
I was also curious because you have just amazing diversity within the country, and I'm wondering if that also affects the cuisine.
Yes. So we have a total of 72 tribes, actually. English happens to be the official language because we were a British colony. So these 72 tribes originate from 10 provinces. Each province or region has a delicacy. You are right, Alex. It does. That it boasts about. I told you already about my husband's region, who take pride in cattle ranching. And so we know they have the beef. In my province, I'm from Eastern Province, there's one popular delicacy, which is a special type of rodent called mbeba. Oh my goodness, I never hear the end of it. We're told, many people look down on that, but it's actually delicious.
Is it farmed or hunted?
It's hunted. Mm-hmm. You have to dig holes in the ground. It's a whole spectacular.
Do you find it in burrows?
They do burrows, they smoke them out, and you see them jumping out of holes. It's all spectacular. And, it's like you went hunting, you come back as a hero.
Oh, really? Is there a special hunting season and hunting parties go out?
Yes, there's seasons when you can hunt them out. So, it's exciting for us. We're looking at our men from Eastern Province. They're our heroes. They brought us food, and other tribes are making fun of us.
Oh, there is a rivalry, and you see that everywhere. It's funny how food is, well, it's one of the most basic things to human survival is food and drink. But as soon as people differentiate in their diets, they start to get competitive about who has the better food.
They make fun of it, but I think secretly wish they could have it. It is tasty, very healthy too.
Oh, is it? Oh, good. It has good nutrition.
Yeah. There's one popular tradition called matebeto. So when one is about to get married, the bride-to-be with her family cooks all the dishes possible from her tribe. Eat the groom and all his family and friends. Basically, the reason for that tradition is to say in their future home, these will be some of the dishes that will be prepared, thus they should be accepted and not treated as foreign foods. Mateveto, the bride and her family cook at their family home. So the bride's mother chooses trusted friends, other wise women that are there to ensure the food is cooked properly and on time. Sometimes it's overnight cooking, and there's drums playing, there's music, there's singing, there's dancing. And about 11, 12, all the food is loaded into trucks and taken to the grooms. So he's there as well with his people. The food is taken and they show them dish by dish. This is this, this is that. Don't be afraid, you can have some rodent. I'm kidding. And once they finish showing them the food, the bride's family leaves.
You comment on the fact that English is a common language because it's a post-colonial country. It was a British colony until 1964. So is there still any influence of British cookery?
The most influence we have, I would say, is the tea. Still do the afternoon tea. We take pride in that at 16 hours, which is 4 p.m.
Okay, no, that's pretty traditional. And is this something you do at home with your family, or do you also observe it if you're working?
Oh, yes. Even at work, when I used to work, I needed to have my tea, in my little drawer so that I could have my tea at 4 p.m. So it's a tradition that we've all gotten accustomed to, especially in my grandparents' time. My parents' time, the 4 o'clock tea was very important.
I was delighted to receive a recipe for a traditional olive pastry from the permanent representative of the Republic of Cyprus to the United Nations, Maria Mikhail. I was fortunate to cover Cyprus years ago when I received a fellowship from the German Marshall Fund of the United States, GMF-US, to support the stories that I contributed from Cyprus to the International Herald Tribune. Although many years have passed since I lived in Cyprus, images of the island's sunny olive groves are etched on my memory. This traditional Cypriot olive pie, or loaf, is often shared with guests or nibbled on shaded verandas while sipping a cup of strong Cypriot coffee. The ambassador's recipe for this traditional Cypriot delicacy is simple to make. The ingredients are vegan, and the result is delicious. You start by rubbing flour and olive oil together until the mixture resembles fine breadcrumbs. Then you add baking powder and orange juice and knead the dough. While the dough is resting, you blend together olives, fresh coriander, fresh spring onions, and spearmint into a smooth paste. You roll out the dough as thinly as possible and spread the olive paste evenly across the dough. Then you tightly roll up the dough so the olive paste forms a spiral, and sprinkle the loaf with sesame seeds. Line a baking tray with parchment paper and bake the olive pie roll for 40 minutes or until nicely golden. Although slices of this treat can be enjoyed during the midday heat in Cyprus, they can also be savored by a crackling fireplace in cooler climates. Like the Brazilian pão de queijo, this could be a tasty starter course for a festive dinner. Malta is a unique culture tucked into a tiny archipelago in the Mediterranean Sea. We spoke with the country's UN ambassador, Vanessa Fraser, about its cuisine, which evolved from traditions dating back to the era when the islands were ruled by the Knights of Malta. But don't try addressing your correspondence with the Knights to her office. The Republic of Malta and the Sovereign Military Order of the Knights are now separate entities. The Knights, who are focused on humanitarian assistance these days, spoke in a Security Council meeting while Malta held the Council presidency. We recently sat down with Ambassador Fraser in her office near the UN headquarters as she was preparing to conclude her Security Council term. Ambassador Fraser, thanks so much for making time for us today. So let's begin by you describing a favorite dish that you would like to see represent your country.
So I'm really torn between two favorite dishes. We are, of course, an island, so fish has to feature, but we have a very special fish, the season, called lampuki. And lampuki is a mahi-mahi. But it starts in the Maltese waters in August, and our season goes on until December. The lampuki, when it's in Maltese waters, is very small. And then it swims through the Mediterranean, crosses into the Atlantic Ocean through the Straits of Gibraltar, and eventually reaches the American shores and becomes mahi-mahi and massive, right? And flattens its face because of its swimming in the ocean. So it is something that links more to the United States also. But I love this fish. It is a really important staple in our diet. We have, as I said, its season is from August to December. And it is extremely delicate and sweet. It's white fish, and it doesn't have bones. It has one spine, basically. So we feed it to children. So from when we're young, we eat this fish, and we cook it in various ways. And the most simple way is that we just cut it up in thick wedges, cover it in flour, and fry it with a lot of garlic. And it's great because you can actually eat it raw. So really, all you need is have it crispy, And
so you fry it just till it gets a little bit crispy, and I suppose good Maltese olive oil.
Yes, good olive oil, great garlic, and you just cut it up into chunks and fry it until you see that the skin is all nice and crispy. And we eat it immediately hot, or you can have it cold on salads. But then we also make lampuki pie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you said you can eat it raw. If you wait, that's your favorite dish.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, the fisherman, and they just put a little citrus
to make it a little ceviche as well.
Ceviche, okay.
But that's,
But the lampuki pie sounds fascinating. How do you make that?
Fantastic also. So
do you actually bake the fish?
Yes, we bake
in the pie.
So when it is, obviously in the beginning of the season, it is small, less than a foot, and very tender and very expensive. But later in the season, when it grows to about 1.5 or 2 feet, and is also much thicker, and it is abundant in the heavy season. So it's a very cheap meal. We would buy it.
So if I understand right, lampuki are basically baby mai. So they start in your waters. And do they have to be a certain size before you can eat them? Like, are you restricted from eating them when they're too small?
Fishermen wouldn't be able to. Exactly. They would have to throw them back in. So they would, and then according to their sizes, when the lampuki season will be announced. But when they are in full season, then we buy, many of them, and we just use the meat and make it into a pie. And it really depends on the family recipes. But we bake it
roughly
also.
How do you make it? Sounds like a seasonal dish. And would you make that around this time of year, around December? Or,
yes.
Okay. So it's almost a holiday dish.
Yes, but we wouldn't serve it in Christmas. Because then for Christmas, it's traditional turkey. They were very British.
Right.
And we need, the turkey and with all the fixings. Very similar to
turkey
your Thanksgiving, but no cranberries. British heritage.
Right, so you've got parsnips.
Yes, but no fruit with our meat. That's not for us at all. Very, very, very British with our Christmas meal.
Right. But lampuki pie is more Maltese.
Very, very Maltese. And you can, chunks of it, after being fried, you just can put it between two nice pieces of Maltese bread, which is the best bread in the world. My son just arrived from Malta on Sunday, and he brought me 2 loaves. daughter and I were like, yes.
Is it like a French bread or a sourdough bread?
Sourdough. It's a sourdough
Oh,
bread.
I love sourdough bread.
Very similar to what you would find in the Puglia region. And we love our bread and oh my gosh, fried lampuki in between two crusts of our bread is the best sandwich you can have with our fantastic tomatoes.
Would that be a lunchtime dish, something you might have by the beach?
Lunchtime, we could give to the kids for school. We also bake lampuki in a very Maltese way with a lot of capers and olives.
Okay, capers is perfect.
Capers and other things.
And is that how you would put it in the pie? Or you said it depends on the family recipe?
Put capers in my Capers is another staple in the Maltese dishes. So I remember walking around the island, with my family, we would pick capers and then dry them in the garden, salt them, eat them. It's something, capers are wild. They grow all over the countryside.
I've used capers with fish, and to me, they come in a bottle. Like olives come in a bottle, capers come in a bottle. What do they look like? Do they grow on bushes?
Yes, they're bushes that grow. So we have our...
So like blackberries, except it's capers.
It's a beautiful plant because the caper, if you don't pick it, blossoms into a beautiful flower, which has white petals and violet, like feelers, tentacles inside. It's actually a very beautiful flower. And they grow wild on our, on the stone walls that divide the fields in the countryside. Basically there are the stone walls, and we have a particular type of wall in our fields where the stones are placed one on top of the other but are not plastered. And this is because we are an arid island. Water is very difficult for us. We don't have have most of our water by reverse osmosis. So when it rains, we try to use the water as much as possible. And so our fields are terraced and they have these cobblestone kind of walls and with Maltese limestone placed on top of each other so that the water can seep through the stone from one field to the other. And there, in between the stones, the caper plant is rampant. It grows.
And can you go wild? Like you can take the children and go picking wild
that's
capers.
what we do. We take these long walks and everyone with their plastic bags, Ziploc bags, and picking them, and it's fun.
I remember picking wild blackberries where I grew up.
These woods, you also have wild asparagus, so you pick up the wild asparagus and the capers, and it's very nice. So that is, for me, lampuki. I love being in Malta in August, and I try to, wherever, if I'm on a holiday and coming back to my posting, I try to wait till the 4th, 5th September so I could eat lampuki.
So you time your vacations home around the lampuki season.
Something I love.
I have not had Maltese wine, so I imagine it's only sold in a few countries, maybe perhaps even in Europe. But what kind of wine is it? Do you primarily produce red wine? Are there certain varietals?
We have red and white wine.
Certain varieties, do they do better? Because there's a hot, arid
which is great because vines need to struggle, right, in order to be very good. So they grow on rocks, and it's great. It's perfect for it. Our soil is salty. Our wine has a great taste because of our terrain. We like our white wine in summer, of course, but our red wine is also very heavy and full-bodied. We have a liquor which we make, which is, everybody knows limoncello, right? But we do something very similar, but with prickly pears.
Oh, prickly pears!
Yeah. Called baitra. So the fruit, the prickly pear, we call it baitra, and the liqueur is called baitra. And it's lovely. You can have it. You can drink it straight up, very cold, or you can mix it with very dry sparkling wine. Or I like to make pitchers, kind of like pims, with it and serve it as cocktails like that. And this is baitra. The prickly pear tree is another tree that you find everywhere in Malta because it protects the fields. So the prickly pears are everywhere. Another thing that you pick when you're walking as well, as long as you have some gloves. But then another dish I really love, and it is our national dish, is rabbit. I know that the Americans get a bit queasy. After fry it in a lot of garlic.
It sounds like that's a stick. Olive oil, garlic. That is your fry-up.
Dip bread in the garlic and the juices, and it's delicious. We also use the bony parts, so the ribs and maybe the neck, whatever, but the bony parts of the rabbit, would then be made into a stew, and you would start with pasta with the stew sauce on it, and then you would have the fried rabbit.
You would start with you mean when you plate it up?
When you plate it,
dish
yes.
it, you put the pot.
Yeah, you'd have spaghetti normally. It would be, and you can either eat it. I mean, you can make. So you can use the bony parts to make a pasta sauce with tomatoes instead of bolognese.
So it's served with the tomato, so pasta, then
pasta
the sauce.
and the bony parts would be fried up in garlic and tomatoes.
And put on top of the sauce.
Or you can use more, you can, and then you fry the meaty parts. Or you can use the entire rabbit and make a stew.
Okay.
Olives, capers, tomatoes in a stew. And then you would eat some on the pasta and some then as a stew with bread.
And the sauce that goes between the pasta and the bony parts, that would be would that be a sort of a traditional marinara sauce?
It's tomato. It's, imagine a bolognese sauce, but instead of minced meat, it would be fried rabbit.
Okay, I can picture that. No, that sounds absolutely delicious. But the rabbit, that is actually a national dish.
National dish is very strange, but we were, in the times of the knights, when the Knights of Malta were in Malta, they would hunt a lot. We have these hunting lodges of the knights, and there were lots of wild hare in Malta, and they would hunt them. Because they were noble, of course, they also exercised the sports of nobility, hunting being one of them. And this is how the rabbit then became part of our cuisine. Now we don't hunt it, of course, it is raised, but it is our national dish. And we have the national dog, which we call kelp tal fennec. And fennec is rabbit in Maltese.
Oh, so they're rabbit hunters.
And the kelp is the dog. So it's the dog of the rabbit, whatever. So it's the specific dog. It's a pointer breed. So it looks kind of like a greyhound, very fast dog, and can see in the dark. So it was has kind of like cat eyes. So it was used for hunting, and it was the dog which was
hunting rabbits at night or at dusk.
Rabbits. So it's a dog for rabbits, right? As we call it. The official name of Maltese is kelp tal fennec, and it's our national dog, and combines with our national dish. So we don't eat the dog, though.
No, I did actually want to ask you about the Maltese Knights. Sadly, I've never actually been to Malta, at least not yet. I did spend some time in Cyprus, actually, as a journalist some years ago, but I do remember their knights.
Yes, so there's a great tradition between the Knights of Malta and Malta. So we consider them a separate country, and we exchange ambassadors. We recognize them as sovereign. In fact, the Knights, the Knights of Malta is their short name. Their official name is the Sovereign Military Order of the Knights Hospitaller. And goes on.
Hospitaller.
And then it is of Jerusalem, of Rhodes, and of Malta. But everybody just calls them the Knights of Malta. And there's a lot of, even here at the UN, I invariably receive letters on their behalf, and they mine also. And people don't understand that we are different. I mean, it really is, for us, another country.
So if they have their own sovereignty, do they have a territory?
They do have territory in Rome. Their headquarters in Rome is sovereign territory.
But within Vatican City?
No, it's actually in Rome, and their palace is sovereign territory. Very much worth visiting. The family trees of some of the knights are incredible.
Do they have representation?
They do. They have
the UN, or they have observer status at the UN.
They are great humanitarians, and they have remained. This was their original cause. So they were established in order to assist the pilgrims during the Crusades. Christian pilgrims were going to the Holy Land during the Crusades, and so they were hospitallers. In fact, they are the Knights Hospitallers, the sovereign order. And that is their core vocation, and they remain till today, their core vocation. So they run hospitals, blood banks, they do a lot of humanitarian work. We did hear them in the council, in fact, yesterday, briefing on the humanitarian work that they carry out. When we had our presidency, we also asked them to brief on their work in Syria, on the humanitarian work that they carry out. But at the time they were in Malta, which was from 1535 to 1798, they ruled Malta. And they come from what they called longs, which is why they have an 8-pointed cross. And at the time, these longs, which in French translated as languages, they were different countries. But now some of them are in the same country. So you have Castile, Aragon, Espagne are all Spain, right, for example. very,
and they
very
really
noble.
were different long at the time. They
Yes.
were different languages.
Yes.
Now they've merged into
Yes.
Spanish and French, but the regional dialects were very important.
And they're very noble because they were the second sons of noble families and had to have 3 generations of nobility from both the mother and the father's side. So very, very noble. And they would take the vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience, which meant their inheritance went to the order. And they left a great heritage in Malta, cultural heritage in Malta. We have, the most beautiful Caravaggio in the world, which was commissioned for their patron church when the capital city was built. Valletta, our capital city, was built during the time of the knights in Malta and was named after the Grand Master at the time, who was La Vallette. And we have many Mattia Preti, for example, in Malta, great painters of the era were commissioned, and we have the most beautiful, beautiful churches filled with incredible art by these artists, and they left a very, very important cultural heritage in Malta. We have a very important archive of the knights also in Malta. They left, not only a cultural heritage, but also education and the Catholic tradition. We were already Catholic. In fact, we were given to Malta by Charles V, who was the emperor of the 2 Sicilies, but he was a Holy Roman Emperor also.
Right.
And we were given to them because after the Turks had ousted the knights, first from Jerusalem, they went to Rhodes, and then from Rhodes, they were ousted again by the Turks. They spent, I believe, 17 years at sea. Then the Holy Roman Emperor gave them Malta to have territory. And this is when they were given Malta for one falconer year, which then leads to all the story about the Maltese falcon. They really did, the knights really did have to give the emperor a falconer year, but not a bejeweled. That's sort of the background.
But it makes a great movie.
Yes. So the movie is great, but that's because falconry, of course, was a very important sport at the time. We still have Maltese falcons in Malta. They were considered prestigious. So it was, and they were giving, and it was an important payment. The Maltese falcon, actually in falconry sport, was a prestigious animal.
Is the sport of falconry still practiced?
Not really, but you can go to the
there are
Maltese Falcon Centre and you can see and
the
learn
falcons.
more about falcons.
And those falcons may be descendants from the
Probably,
falcons that were
yes.
used in falconry in medieval times.
And that's it from the Delegates Lounge. We'd like to thank our esteemed guests who've graciously allowed us to share their hard-earned insights into what really matters. And then there's you, our listeners, who we hope are sufficiently edified to clamour for more of the same. Do drop in for a weekly episode on Thursday or from time to time if we're on the road for special events, in which case there'll be a bonus episode. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you like what you've heard, please take a moment to rate or review the show, as it helps others who share your abiding interest in world affairs to find their way to the Delegates Lounge. You can connect with us on many popular social media platforms or reach out to us directly at info@delegateslounge.com. We're a small team, so we can't respond to every message, but we will read them. Our show this week was written and produced by the host and by yours truly, executive producer Frank Radford. Until next time, keep calm and curious.